I like the fact that there's not going to be fireworks. Like,
Yeah.
Parag's not going, dude, I'm giving you $25 million and not a penny more. Or, Kyle Strongen is not saying, look, we're not taking $70 million or don't even call us.
Right.
I don't think I think they're probably closer to reality in both situations. So I like the fact that there's not going to be fireworks and that, and obviously we know Brock. Brock wants to get this done. He said he wanted to get it done quickly and quietly. He's not going to miss the offseason program for a few more bucks. I just know that. They know that. And so I don't think they're going to put him in that position. I think they'll get it done. Mm-hmm. But then saying that the framework might be different, I want to talk to you about that. I definitely want your opinion on that. But the last part of it is where it might take time. They don't have time on this one. They blew it on Ayuk. They blew it on Trent. They waited too long. They weren't going to win this year anyway, but it didn't help. And nobody ever wins when your quarterback holds out. They have to get that deal done. And I would say the deadline is not camp like the deadline should be the draft.
Yes.
And that's when this thing's got to be done. Give me your thoughts on all of it. Well, and once again, thank you, Tim Kawakami,
the based god of columnists.
We raise our glass to Tim.
Let's pour one out for Tim. So not a surprise to me at all that Tim is hearing what I haven't heard anything to the contrary on that, right? Where there would be some conflict or controversy or any butting of heads. I've heard that these are two rational actors, that the Niners are going to come in correct, and that Brock Purdy's not going to come in asking for the world. So I haven't checked in on that in recent weeks, but that paired with Brock's comments, obviously Sean Hensley knows far more than either of us here.
Sean's dialed in. Yeah.
Right.
This just in, guys. Sean Hensley reporting that Brock wants out.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure he wants out of the current lease on his apartment so he can buy a big ass house. So it doesn't surprise me at all that everybody's coming at this in a very good headspace, and I do expect things to progress quickly as it pertains to this. I would say that there is I think post-combine going into free agency, I think that they're going to want to have the cost certainty. So it behooves the 49ers to maybe be a bit more aggressive in terms of the time frame so that they know how much money they have to spend in free agency. Because while you do have some wiggle room, they don't have that much wiggle room, and it'd be worth I mean, Sean, you're killing yourself here. I
don't even Brock. This guy blocks out the noise. He blocks out the noise.
Oh yeah, he's this man's on a flip phone, not literally, but figuratively. We can't all go to the flip phone lifestyle. We wouldn't be able to order in restaurants. At some point, you'll get rid of me, Larry, and I don't think today's the day.
Sorry about that.
No problem at all.
Fat fingers, dude. Fat fingers.
Yeah. Well, Brock's about to have a fat bank account. So I think that this thing is I think it's going to be very clean and clear cut. The interesting point, and this is one that I hadn't heard before, is the shorter term. I do think we have to put into context what that means. Take a look at Jalen Hurts' contract on Over the Cap. That thing has void years into his 30s, right? All these contracts, they have manipulated the salary cap and the AAV to then stretch this thing out. It almost forces renegotiation after a year or two. I think it's prudent for Brock, and I think it's prudent for the 49ers to not play that game because of the injury concerns, because of his size, because we saw he wasn't as good when the people around him weren't as good. That doesn't mean he shouldn't get a new contract. That doesn't mean he shouldn't be paid top of the market. But he is not some transcendent talent, right? He gave the 49ers a lot this past season. He was the only thing they had going for the majority of the season. They're drafting 11th overall. Like, he's not one of those players that takes you to another level all on his own. Doesn't matter who you put around him. Those are very few and far between, if there are even but two in the league right now, maybe three. So he's not that caliber of player. I wouldn't treat him, or I wouldn't pay him like that caliber of player. And I don't think you have to under the current structure and guidelines. And I think it behooves Purdy to not take one of those deals where now the two sides are wed to each other because of salary cap concerns for the next 5-6 years, and there's constant renegotiation and constant, how do we restructure this thing? It just creates somewhat of a mess because you signed this. They say it's a 4-year deal, but it turns out it's actually like a 9-year deal where, after 2 years you have to add 4. And then after, 3 years of that, you have to add 2. And it's the only way to stay cap compliant is to constantly renegotiate it. How about we just do this clean? All of this funny money. It's ironic. The 49ers, I think, were the first team if it wasn't them, it was the Eagles, the first team to put on those void years on contracts and to do the funny money game. It is now proliferated so intensely throughout football that the 49ers, I think, are probably wise to zag and say, hey, we got a lot of dead cap money coming next year and the year after that because we've played that game. Let's get clean. Let's be above board on this next deal. Let's guarantee a lot of Brock's contract. 3 years, 4 years. That's what the contract actually is. Let's not pretend as if it's some sort of 6-year contract where really we have to renegotiate after 2. That I think that it would be, I think that that's good business. I think that that's transparent in a way for the fan base. I think it's positive. Anytime, people want to talk, too much money, too little money. My stance on the contract is very simple. Until I see the nitty-gritty details, I don't know if the contract's good or not. You could say, we're going to pay him $72 million a year. And I'll say, okay, I need to actually see the details because you might not be. And Diamador Lamore is making $92 million apparently. Not really, not even close. It's like $12 million in real guarantees. This stuff is phony baloney, and guys want the headlines, but the real stuff comes in the tax evasion purposes of these contracts. And some of these quarterback contracts are just wonky and strange and unnecessarily unruly. And with a quarterback like Brock, who's kind of right there in the middle, good enough to get paid, but not good enough to commit the entire franchise to for the next half decade and beyond, I think this is the perfect opportunity to just play it straight. And it sounds like that's what they're interested in doing.
It is interesting on a lot of fronts. I mean, one, I'd love to know whose idea is it to try to go with kind of a shorter term deal, if that is indeed the case. Because, think of it this way. Shanahan said, I want Brock here as long as I'm here.
Right.
But, it could have been the organization, the ownership, that wanted a short-term deal because they want the flexibility if things really go south in the next couple of years. 49ers won 6 games. What if the 49ers go on a 3-year run here where they win 6 and 5 and 6 again and can't get up off the canvas and can't, resuscitate this team? Then maybe this short-term contract for Brock is not only about Brock. Maybe it's about just the ownership's confidence in the total direction. What do you think of that, Dieter? Because
100%.
To me, this gives the short term on Brock. You pay him, good money in a short amount of time. But if by chance the whole thing goes south, he goes south. He's turning it over in the fourth quarter. They're losing games. They win 5 games, 6 games. They don't look good. They don't make the playoffs.
Right.
Well, then either they can part ways from Brock or they can potentially part ways with everybody, go get a whole new person, but then have that person have a fresh start
100%.
at quarterback. What do you think about? Because I'd love to know, is Brock's guy pushing for this because he'd like to get back in the market and gamble on himself?
Yeah.
Is that Kyle Strongton's game plan? Is this Shanahan and Lynch's game plan, trying to kind of show Brock that like they're all in with him and he's all in with them? Kind of, we're going to take our shot with you, nobody else. Is that what this is about? Or is this about ownership going, you know what? Heck, things go bad in the next 2 years. I may want to say goodbye to Lynch, Shanahan, and Purdy. What do you think?
I think all parties are behooved by this because there's no downside whatsoever if you're Brock Purdy to taking a short-term deal. I mean, one of my favorite adages is that there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. If you sign a guy to a 1-year deal and he sucks, great. You just move on. You took the risk and it didn't pan out. And if he hits, great. Now you got a year with
Campbell.
Well,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
But to the point, if Devondre Campbell was on a 3-year deal, how bad would that look? Now, the beauty of the NFL is most guys are on effective 1-year deals. except quarterbacks. I want to go back to the Jalen Hurts contract because I think it's a wonderful parallel. Next year he'll get $42 million in guaranteed money, 21 against the cap. 26 he'll get 20 in guaranteed money and 31 against the cap. After that, he has no guaranteed money. His contract runs for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 more years after that, but no guaranteed money. So it's not really his contract. That's just what the Eagles have to do to keep him on the books. But in 2029, when he has his first void year, okay, he has a $97 million cap number. So when that's the case, what that tells you is that after this season or after next, he has to renegotiate because no one in their right mind could possibly take a $97 million cap hit and live to tell the tale. You have to renegotiate it. So it's almost like a poison pill from either side saying, okay, we gave you this, we give ourselves an out, but also, we're going to probably have to renegotiate. This is why I wouldn't play that game at all. Give him his money straight up. I think it's also something to note that they could play the franchise tag game with Brock Purdy as well as anybody, right? The same way that Dak Prescott did, the same way that Kirk Cousins did. That's the same caliber of quarterback, albeit Brock is at the nascent part of his career, and those guys are middle and end. So, but kind of that level of good enough to get paid, not good enough to feel like we got to throw all the money we have at this guy. That's franchise tag territory if there ever was one. That's guaranteed money. And I'm sure they've crunched the numbers on, we're going to have to pay him 50 and then, 55. Like, why are we pretending to do these void years? Why are we playing salary cap Fugazi games when we can just pay the man what he's worth for the time that he's here? And then if it doesn't work out, we're off scot-free. And if it does work out, we sign a new contract, which based with all these deals, we were going to have to do anyway. I don't see the benefit with a quarterback of doing all these void years and playing the salary cap game. Give the man the money he's worth for the years that he's here. And so long as he's still worth that money, keep paying him that money. And the second that he stops, stop paying him the money and cut the deal. And that way you don't have these tentacles that last for 9 years after his guaranteed money is up. I have all the respect in the world for how the Eagles run their business, and I'm sure that they have very justified reasons as to why they did what they did. But this thing looks like a headache, and I wouldn't want a headache with my quarterback. I want everything clear and clean and obvious with my quarterback so that we don't have to play these games every other year because the salary cap. I want to play these games on will we or won't we with our quarterback strictly on how they play on the field. It's enough to worry about that, much less have to worry about how it all fits in with the salary cap. Those are the guys you don't fuck around with.
I also kind of think that just 24 demands, the way that 24 went demanded that it be more of a shorter term deal because it was
or at least some coverage for the Niners. Yeah, the Niners can't go all the way in on a guy who you saw, as you noted, backslide.
Yeah. I mean, they have to go. Here's the tricky part. They can't go all the way in, as you say, but they have to go all the way in as far as their mindset and how they feel about him. They have to be all in on Brock Purdy if they're going to have any chance to win. But contractually, they can't be so all in on him that it sets the franchise back, several years or it attaches them to a player. I mean, this is a volatile game. Guys get better, guys get worse, turnovers happen, injuries happen. Sometimes, there's always quarterbacks can only take so much abuse and then they start to regress. And that's that's
especially when you're a smaller quarterback,
Right? If they don't build a good offensive line around this guy, he's not going to be the same player in a year or two. And I think the 49ers have I kind of like the idea. If Tim is onto it and his source is onto it, and this is going to be maybe a big money but a shorter term deal with Brock getting a lot of it maybe right up front.
I mean, 3 years, 150 with 125 guaranteed. Done. Let's do it.
Right.
Don't think twice. You just ride that wave. But I'm looking through all these contracts here. Kyler Murray, no guaranteed money after next season, but salary caps hits of 50, 43, and 46 with most of that being dead money. So if you want out on Kyler Murray, you're not out for another 3 years, even though he's gone. Jalen Hurts, I just went through. Let's go through like Joe Burrow, who no one's getting rid of Joe Burrow, but Joe Burrow's guaranteed money is up after this upcoming season. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more years on the books. Now, some of those are easy, but there's, a $57 million cap hit with no guaranteed money. And so all of these contracts are built for it's a Mahomes contract. The Mahomes contract, 10 years, 450. Well, it's basically been built. You have to restructure it every year. Every year you have to go back to the table and renegotiate the deal because there's no guaranteed money in 2026. So I wouldn't dick around with that. I wouldn't want to constantly. That's a win for the quarterback where they say, no, we have to go to the table now. And I don't think that the position is going to become so flush with talent that teams are going to say, we're going to let you walk out the door. We're going to let a quarterback who is good enough to have be good enough to make 50 something million dollars. We're going to let you walk out the door because, we have so many options. We can just go get somebody else. These quarterbacks have this written into their contracts because they know it's a win for them and that the number is going to keep going up. I mean, CJ Stroud's going to be a $70 million a year quarterback there. And everybody who has their contract structured so that all these cap hits are put way down the line to when they shouldn't be playing, well, they're going to say, oh, that's super interesting that CJ Stroud's getting $70 million a year. I need my contract renegotiated, or unless you're going to have to take a $75 million dead cap hit or a $97 million dead cap hit. Wouldn't it be better to just pay me? And now the teams are on their back foot at the start of the negotiation. They might not want to. They might want to do something, but they don't have that flexibility because they paid themselves off. They did a payday loan in effect on these deals. The Niners don't have to do that because they do have clean enough books, so they shouldn't do that.
Well, here's the other thing. I mean, get whatever they're gonna get done. Get it done now. Why? Because you want to get it done. The deadline should not be camp. The deadline should be March 1st. Why? Because free agency starts on March 12th, and you're gonna need to. There's only 2 or 3 ways to help your football team. You can draft guys. You can sign guys. You can trade for guys. You can't. I mean, you don't have to be a big player in free agency, but you can't sit it out. The Niners have accumulated $50 million. Trying to put together whatever kind of deal they can on the cap. And if they can put together a more favorable deal, and Brock, I'm sure, will be motivated to work with them on this, he wants to have as good a team around him as possible. And so I think there's a chance that it gets done before free agency begins, and that enables the 49ers to take some of that money and I think potentially go after somebody else.